Welcome in or welcome back to another episode of You Are the One You Seek. As per usual, I'm your host David, and today I'm backtracking a bit and reading the very introductory part of the Jeshua Channelings. Who is Jeshua? I read a bit of this when I did the first Jeshua Channeling episode, which I believe was Cosmic Birthing Pain. So it's a little bit redundant, but I wanted to at least read the entire thing. I think it's important to kind of give the context for who is this person channeling through Pamela, how are they identifying themselves, and this was really mind-blowing for me when I first got this book and then read the introduction. It was kind of like, again, it felt like the Jesus that I had always wanted to be real, but somehow the Bible didn't quite line up with, I guess, what I felt in my heart was who this person represented really, or what he represented. And so reading this was just such a healing thing for me. And it's hard for me to say that without hearing the voice of people in my life who would take away from it and say it's not real. Channelings are, from the dark realms and they're meant to be a trick and all this kind of stuff. I just don't feel that. I understand they're subjective. I think everything that we inspire or are inspired by is subjective. Art, music, poetry, writings like the Bible, they can be channeled, but are they 100% accurate to everybody? Well, no, because we're all individual and unique, and we all have a different interpretation of information. So you have to decide for yourself personally what's actually real and resonant for me versus what is like objectively, empirically true, and that debate can be endless. So I at least have to externalize the internal war that happens every time I try and really dig into, an idea like Jesus is still actively channeling through people, and, the messages are really consistently about unity, love, and our inner divinity. And that's the part that's compelling to me, is all the people who have been channeling Jeshua in the last several decades have this consistent message of just inescapable love and a unity that is beyond kind of what we can imagine, but also a recognition of a lot of the hardships that we're under and kind of why they exist, giving context to why things feel so difficult as a human. And before I read this, I should mention that you can go to Pamela and Garrett's website, where this book and many other books come from, and there's updated channelings from Jeshua that are really, really good. www.jeshua.net. And there's actually a playlist on my YouTube channel where you can go and listen to the Jeshua channelings that I've read from so far. They're kind of out of order, but the Lightworker series is in order, and the rest is going to be a little bit patchworked. But, it really doesn't matter if you listen to this, in order. It's not a narrative that you need to follow from chapter to chapter. It's these different chunks of profound ideas about really important things about life. So here we go. Who is Jeshua? I am the one who has been among you, and who you have come to know as Jesus. I am not the Jesus of your church tradition or the Jesus of your religious writings. I am Jeshua ben Joseph. I have lived as a man of flesh and blood. I did reach Christ consciousness before you, but I was supported in this by powers which are beyond your imagination at present. My coming was a cosmic event. I made myself available for this. It wasn't easy. I did not succeed in my endeavors to pass on to people the immensity of God's love. There was much misunderstanding. I came too early, but someone had to come. My coming was like throwing a stone in a large fish pond. All the fish flee and the stone sinks into the deep. There are ripples noticeable long afterwards, though. One might say that the kind of consciousness I wished to convey did its work underground after that. On the surface of the pool there were constant ruffles. Well-intended but misguided interpretations rose to meet and fight each other in my name. The ones who were touched by my energy, moved by the impulse of the Christ energy, could not really integrate it with their psychological and physical reality. It has taken a long time before Christ consciousness could really set foot on earth. But now the time has come, and I have returned and speak through many, through all and to everyone who wants to hear me, and who has come to understand me from the quietness of their hearts. I do not preach, and I do not judge. My sincerest hope is to speak to you of the vast and unfailing presence of love, accessible to you at any time. I am part of a much larger consciousness, a greater entity, but I, Yeshua, am the incarnated part of that entity or field of consciousness. I do not like the name Jesus much, for it has become so caught up with a distorted version of what I stand for. Jesus is owned by the church traditions and authorities. He has been molded to fit the interest of the church patriarchs for centuries, so much so that the prevailing image of Jesus is now so far removed from what I represent that it would truly please me if you could just let it go and release me from that heritage. I am Yeshua, man of flesh and blood. I am your friend and brother. I am familiar with being human in every way. I am teacher and friend. Do not fear me. Embrace me like you'd embrace one of your kin. We are family. Yeshua, Jesus, and Christ. The Christ energy that I came to offer you stems from a collective energy that has gone beyond the world of duality. This means that it recognizes the opposites of good and bad, light and dark, giving and taking as the aspects of one and the same energy. Living from the reality of Christ consciousness means that there is no struggle with anything. There is a complete acceptance of reality. This absence of struggle or resistance is its main characteristic. Since Christ, or the Christ energy, recognizes the extremes of all thoughts, feelings, and actions as the manifestation of the one divine energy, there can be no duality, no judgment in the way that he, the Christed energy, experiences reality. Let's give an example here. When the Christ in you watches an armed conflict between people, her heart weeps for the fate of the beaten one, but she does not judge. She feels the pain and humiliation with each blow, and her heart is filled with compassion, but she does not judge. She watches the offender, the one with the gun, who has power, who inflicts pain, and she feels the hatred and bitterness inside of them, and her heart grieves, but she does not judge. The heart of Christ embraces the whole spectacle with deeply felt compassion, but without judgment, for she recognizes all aspects as experiences she has gone through herself. She herself has lived out all of these roles of offender and victim, of master and slave, and she has come to understand that she is neither of them, but that which underlies both. The Christ energy has passed through all the energies of duality. It identified itself now with the dark, then with the light, but through it all something remained the same. And when she realized this sameness underlying all her experiences, her consciousness obtained a new kind of unity. It was Christed. The Christed energy was the energy I came to offer you. Who I was is quite difficult to explain. I will try to do so by distinguishing between three identities: Yeshua, Jesus, and Christ. I, the one who is now speaking, am Yeshua. I was the human being who carried the Christ energy in my incarnation on earth. This energy may also be called Christ. Jesus, in my terminology, is the name for the godlike man who was the result of the infusion of Christ energy into the physical and psychological reality of Yeshua. This Christ energy was poured into Yeshua from spheres of light which are, from your standpoint, located in your future. Jesus was the man who performed miracles and brought forth prophecies. Jesus was an emissary from the spheres of light, incarnated in me. In fact, he was my future self. Jesus was, from my perspective as the man Yeshua living on earth, my future self who had become one with the Christ energy. Because the Christ in him was clearly present and visible to many people around him, he appeared to them as divine. I, Yeshua, was a man of flesh and blood. The unique and to some extent artificial aspect of the Jesus construction was that I received his/my Christed self from the future. I did not become Christed on the basis of my past or the experiences of my past. I did not achieve enlightenment in a natural way, but by means of an intervention from outside, so to speak, by an infusion of Christ energy from the future. I had agreed to play this role before I began this lifetime. I agreed to be overshadowed by the Jesus presence as an act of service, and also because of a deeply felt longing to get to know the reality of my deepest potential. Jesus, my future self from the spheres of light, had become one with the Christ energy. Yet he did not represent the entire energy of Christ here on earth, for this energy encompasses more than Jesus. He is one part or cell of it. Christ, or the Christ energy, it is more like an energy field than a personal entity, is a collective energy which has many aspects or cells, which are cooperating in such a way that they function as one organism. All cells make a unique contribution to the whole and experience themselves as individuals while being part of the whole as well. One might call these several aspects of the Christ energy angels or archangels. It is the hallmark of angels that they have a sense of individuality as well as a high degree of selflessness, which allows them to feel one with collective energies and be joyfully in their service. The notion of archangels is elucidated in the last chapter of the Lightworker series, Your Light Self. Jesus' mission on earth. Jesus was an energy from the future who came to earth to bring illumination and knowledge to humanity. He came from another world or even dimension, and he brought with him the elevated energy of this reality. His awareness of his own greater self remained intact while he incarnated on earth. Because of his presence in me, Yeshua, I could easily realize the flexibility of material laws and perform miracles. The reason why the Jesus/Yeshua personality came to earth was to create an opening or doorway to a different state of consciousness. I wanted to set an example of the possibilities that are available to each human being. In the spheres of light where Jesus came from, it was felt that the earth was going in a direction that would end up in great darkness and self-alienation for the souls involved in the earth experiment. It was decided that a powerful impetus for change was going to be given, which would clearly show human beings the choices available to them. By sending the energy personality of Jesus, we wanted to hold up a mirror to human beings and remind them of their own divine origin and the dormant potentials they carried within, the potentials for peace, freedom, and mastership over yourself. Every human being is the master of their own reality. You are creating your own reality all the time. You are able to let go of a miserable or unsatisfying reality and allow light to enter and transform your creation. You are your own master, but you tend to give your power away to outside authorities who claim to know the truth and to want the best for you. This happens in politics, medicine, education, etc. Also, your entertainment industry is full of false images about happiness, success, and beauty, which serve no one except the ones who construct them. Have you ever thought about how much money is spent just creating images? In the media, in newspapers, in movies, on radio and television, and on the internet, images are spread all the time. Where do these images come from? Why are they there? Who designs them? Images are a means of exerting power over people. Images can make people subservient to and disconnected from their true needs without the use of physical force or violence. Images can make people voluntarily give away their own power and self-worth. They delude you in such a way that you need not be violently forced into anything. You will accept the values portrayed by the image as your own and act accordingly. This is what we would call invisible mind control, and it is rampant among your free Western societies. The function of light is primarily to bring clarity, awareness, and transparency to the invisible structures of thought and feelings that shape your life. Light is the opposite of mind control. Where light enters a reality, it breaks bonds of mere power and authority, and it breaks down the hierarchies based on them. It holds misuse of power up to the light, and it frees people from delusions and illusions that take away their power for self-determination. Jesus was a threat to the ruling order at the time he lived. By what he told people and simply by what he radiated, he caused structures of power to be seen for what they truly were. This was unbearable and unacceptable for the existing hierarchy. The role of lightworker which Jesus took upon him was heavy, especially for me, Yeshua, the human being who agreed to carry this intense, bright energy in my lifetime. I, Yeshua, was almost overshadowed by the force of Jesus' presence, the presence of my future self. Although it filled me with great insights, love, and inspiration, It was quite a challenge physically to carry or hold his energy. I could not really integrate his energy into my physical being. The cells in my body were not ready for it. So on a physical level, my body got exhausted from carrying these intense energies of light. Apart from the physical aspect, there was also a psychological burden to carrying the Christ energy. I found it very hard to watch the nature of the Christ energy being frequently misunderstood, even by my closest friends or disciples. As the human being that I was, I sometimes became desperate and doubted the value of the journey I undertook. I felt that the world was not ready for the Christ energy. I felt that its essence was not recognized. Jesus was truly a pioneer in his time. Results of Jesus' coming to earth. By the coming of Jesus to earth, a seed was planted. It was the seed of the Christ energy. People were moved by what I said and did, and unconsciously at the soul level, they did recognize the Christ energy. Deep within their souls, a memory was stirred. Something was touched and set in motion. At the surface, on the level of what can be seen and felt in the physical world, my coming created much commotion. By virtue of the law of duality, the powerful infusion of light creates a powerful reaction from the dark. This is just a matter of logic. Light is confronting. It wants to break structures of power and set the imprisoned energies free. Darkness is the energy that wants to suppress and control. So these two energies have opposing interests. Where one gains in power, the other will strike back to defend itself and regain balance. Thus, my coming to earth also initiated much struggle and violence, as a counter-reaction to the light I came to spread. The persecution of my followers, the early Christians, is one example of this violent counter-reaction. But the Christians themselves, the founders of the church, did not shun violence either in their eagerness to spread my teachings. Think of the Crusades and the Inquisition. In the name of Christ, the most barbaric deeds of darkness have been performed, by Christians as well as by non-Christians. The masters of light, who decided to send me as an emissary to earth, were aware of the fact that the intense and unprecedented energy of Jesus might invoke strong reactions of darkness. Jesus penetrated the reality of earth like a comet. It was a kind of emergency measure from the spheres of light, from energies which were deeply concerned with earth and its inhabitants. It was an ultimate attempt to divert the direction in which the earth was heading, a way of interrupting cycles of ignorance and destruction which kept on repeating themselves. The results were ambiguous. On the one hand, the light of Jesus invoked much darkness by way of counter-reaction. On the other hand, the seed of the Christ consciousness was planted in the hearts of a number of people. An important reason for my coming was to awaken the lightworker souls on earth. They would be the most sensitive and receptive of my energy, although many had become lost in the density and darkness of the earth plane as well. Lightworkers are in fact emissaries of light with the same mission as Jesus. The difference is that in their incarnation in a physical body, they are less connected to the wider divine self than I was. They are more subject to the karmic burdens and illusions of the earth plane. They are more bound to the past. With the incarnation of Jesus, something special was occurring. Jesus did not carry any karmic burdens from the past, and he could therefore more easily keep in touch with his divinity. He was here in a somewhat artificial way, a presence from the future, being here and there at the same time. The consciousness of the beings of light, which jointly decided to insert the energy of Jesus into earth reality at that time, was not perfect and all-knowing. Every conscious being is in the process of developing and understanding itself all the time. Among humans, there is a persistent belief that everything is predestined by some divine plan. Behind this belief is the notion of a dominant, omniscient God. This notion is false. There is no predestination by an outside force. There are only probabilities which are the result of inner choices you yourself make. My coming to earth was based on a decision made by a collective energy of light, of which Jesus was a part. It was a choice that involved risks and an unpredictable outcome. The collective energy of light I am speaking of is an angelic realm that is deeply connected to humanity and earth because it helped to create humans and the earth. Actually, you are part of them and not separate from them at all, but we are now speaking multidimensionally, i.e., on a level of consciousness that is outside of your linear framework of time. In another dimension or framework of time, you are these angels that make up the spheres of light from which Jesus descended to earth. You, light workers, are much more interconnected with the Jesus event, this infusion of Christ energy on earth, than you suppose. It was, to some extent, a collective endeavor to which you all contributed, and of which I, Yeshua, was the visible, physical representative. My message was that the Christed energy is present in all human beings as a seed. When you look up to me as some kind of authority, you have misunderstood my message. I wished and still wish to invite you to believe in yourself, to find the truth within your own heart, and not to believe in any authority outside of you. Ironically, the official Christian religion has placed me outside of your reality as an authority figure to worship and obey. This is quite the opposite of what I intended. I intended to show you that you can be a living Christ yourself. I now ask you to recognize the Christ within and to return my humanness to me. I am Yeshua, man of flesh and blood, and truly a friend and brother to you all. End of chapter. Yeah, so that's definitely a different Jesus than I got from my time growing up in a Christian household and in the church. And after spending 37 years of struggling to call myself a Christian for a good chunk of that, but desperately clinging to this notion that Jesus was not only real, but was much more loving and gracious than I had been taught. And that's why these channelings have been so profound to me, because it healed that part of me that was wounded by all the other things that the Bible and that church represented and taught me, and all of the hatred and division and just ugly stuff that, can easily be derived from the Bible. It doesn't take, all this great corruption and evil. The Bible is a very confusing text with a lot of super contradictory messages, and people always say, no, those contradictions have all been made right by scholars and theologians and whatever. And every theologian and scholar that I've come across has such a vastly different perspective and angle on who is Jesus, what does the Old Testament mean, what is salvation, what is hell, what's going to happen at the end of the world. Just it diverges so greatly from person to person that I think that just proves the subjective nature of who we are as not only humans, but as souls and spirits. That we all have a very unique perspective, and that's not a bad thing. We see it as this big problem because it is a problem when we try and assimilate ourselves into systems of power structures, and hierarchical, authoritative states of mind. Those are all contrary to who we are at a deep level, which is why the human spirit always fights back against oppression, right? We've proven that we don't put up with being caged for very long, although there's been some great exceptions to that in our current Western societies, because we've been so distracted and numbed by entertainment and medications that just kind of make us apathetic. And I'm not here to bash, medications. I've been on antidepressants myself and have had some significant mental health challenges, namely anxiety and depression, with a great deal of suicidal ideation. And it was only recently that I was given a past life regression by Dr. Mary Helen Hensley, who I've had on the podcast. And she explained to me that I was, in a previous life, a young boy who moved from Germany with my uncle. My parents stayed behind in Germany. But I had moved to New York City with my uncle in the garment district, where I assume I worked at a garment factory. And this was around 1902 to like 1913, something like that, or the dates are a little ambiguous to me, or not quite locked in, but my uncle loved to slam my head into a sewing table and was just generally abusive and terrible. And I'm assuming there were a lot of other unpleasant aspects to my life, because at the age of 14, I apparently hung myself with a leather belt from an old dirty radiator. And, it seems like my cynical mind wants to go, okay, how can you prove that? So I looked up my name, Jeremiah Riker, and I couldn't find information about that specific person, but I found out about the Riker family from Germany and when they came to the Americas to, find work and all this stuff. And it definitely lined up with the timeline, but it also explained why in this life, when I felt a great deal of physical pain or I felt rejected or shunned, suicide has always felt like a viable option to me, because I think there's a part of me that remembers that I got out of this experience before using that. Maybe many, many lifetimes I've done that. But something's different this time, because I realized that I'm not actually learning any of the lessons I came here to learn if I just kind of keep taking myself out of the picture before I have the opportunity to, find the good things and not look at it like, why is this happening to me? And start looking at it as, what can I learn from this? What is this trying to teach me? And I understand that sounds really cruel and detached on a certain level. Like, you can minimize someone's suffering by saying, well, just ask yourself, what is this trying to teach you? And there are times where that's not the right approach to someone else's suffering. It's really meant to be focused on yourself, internalizing this idea of, I'm not a victim. I am a big part of this whole weird puzzle and play that is playing out, where we have gone from, golden age to dark ages, I think probably different times as different species on different planets, but specifically on Earth, we're coming out of a pretty dark age, and we're moving into a new golden age, in the age of Aquarius, and an age of enlightenment and truth and understanding, hopefully an ascension for not only the planet but our bodies, and deeper levels of communication like telepathy, energy healing being more of just a common thing and not some, wackadoodle relegated to the basement type of, practice, which I'll be honest, in my experiences with natural doctors, there's a reason sometimes for that stigma, but I've also had incredible breakthroughs with other natural doctors who were still a little wacky, but definitely did some stuff right by me and my body. So yeah, I'm just really excited about where we're moving towards, because I believe that Yeshua is trying to spell out for us in all of these channelings that we're not bound to the horribleness of the human experience, that we've been kind of locked into a stupor by dark energies that would seek to oppress us. But I believe that the reign of the dark is ending, and I think you can kind of see that playing out in real time right now, where a lot of corruption and darkness is being exposed, from corrupt business practices to corrupt politicians, corrupt athletes and actors, and people in power who have greatly abused their power to abuse other people, to take advantage of situations that really detach you from, your empathy and your Christed self that is kind of waiting for you just to wake up. So I don't believe Jesus came here, or Yeshua came here embodying the person of Jesus, or the energy of the Christ. I don't believe that was done to save us from sin, but it was to wake us up from the stranglehold of dark energy that was kind of keeping us trampled underfoot. So it does have a lot of parallels to many religious teachings, and I know it's like perfect fodder for, maybe my parents or somebody to kind of come in and say, well, see, you're really close, but what you're trying to talk about is what's in the Bible, but you're just getting it twisted, and my perspective is the Bible got it twisted. The person of Yeshua or Jesus or Christ is still trying to communicate to us now, what is the way forward, but we're trying to, decipher it all from this 2,000-year-old text that has wildly different messaging and questionable authorship, and a lot of reasons to doubt it's inerrant and completely divinely inspired, any more than any other thing we put out there in the world is divinely inspired. Like, I think music is divinely inspired, art is divinely inspired. Everything you do is in some way divinely inspired because you are divine. I've been accused I remember in like 6th grade, I was going to a Christian school, and I was really trying to embrace my Christianity, and I felt this huge resistance from the actual mechanism of this school, and how it was just authoritative and not really, empathetic or Christ-centered. And everything I saw was through the lens of, what's God going to think of me? What does this mean spiritually? And I had a friend at the time say, you're over spiritualizing everything. Sometimes it's not spiritual. And I was like, well, aren't we like spiritual beings? Aren't we created as, spiritual beings? Doesn't that make everything significant and spiritual? And I think we both had a good point. Her that I was kind of trying to take every moment and ascribe some sort of grand design plan to it. And I think I had a good point that everything we do is spiritual because we are spirit. The issue is we're disconnected from the understanding of that while we're here, so we do act on very human and very, dark and negative impulses quite a bit. But to me, that doesn't mean it's any less divine. It's divine to experience darkness and then be able to alchemize that into light. That's why we're here, is to literally do things that have not really been done in the universe before, because I think most other species, and I could be dead wrong about this, but I think, a lot of other planets and systems were set up to be more binary, kind of on or off. You're either kind of positively oriented or negatively oriented, but you don't have all this ability to take all this darkness and alchemize it into light in one lifetime. You kind of have to choose which lifetime is going to be which kind of flavor. Whereas the human being has access to all these different energies. And so we have so much dynamic choice that it's almost suffocating. We don't know what to do with it. And it's why there's so much chaos, I think, in the world, because we do have this infinite wheel of colors and energies to choose from, and they're constantly being pumped into Earth. And I think we're coming to a time where that's changing, and we're going to have a much more unified, high vibrational energy that is the dominant thing, where we're just not constantly at war with ourselves and each other. So that to me is what this whole journey is about, is to fully appreciate being back in love, back in the light, back in the understanding of who we truly are. And Yeshua was just trying to kind of hold our hand and show us how that works and help us to uncouple ourselves from religious indoctrination and indoctrination by education systems, politics, again, all the traps of kind of power and ego, where we look at other people and think, ooh, they're smarter than me, they're better than me. And again, I think that's falling apart. I think a lot of these billionaires and people who we revere as like almost like gods are being exposed for being much more corrupt than the average person, as far as because of how much that power does corrupt the human mind and the human heart. We're not meant to wield power in that way. We're meant to be in a unified, loving, harmonious place with the earth and each other. But I think that we can only appreciate it fully once we've gone through all of the bullshit and the darkness and the difficulties. So that's at least how I'm justifying everything and trying to see it in my mind that, it's all got a purpose for ultimate appreciation. It's kind of like a pleasure delay situation where, we could just kind of have a little bit of darkness then go right back to the light, but having just this prolonged kind of slog through all of these difficult situations just gives us even more appreciation and perspective for how good things can be when we lean into the Christ itself, the ascended energy that is really our natural state. But yeah, it's an adventure. We're here on an adventure and a journey. And again, it feels like what a effed up journey and like game to play when so many people suffer and die and are in so much pain. And I agree, it's hard for me to square that, but I truly believe that we choose to come here and that we choose to have these dense and painful experiences to help us understand and appreciate our true divine nature. I can't articulate that in a way that is going to satisfy someone else's mind and heart, but for me it's enough to just sort of see it as a play, as an experience that we can have, but also one that is going to benefit us in that we have a whole new perspective and a whole new ability to create from a place of just infinite love and infinite gratitude. So that's my sermon. Thank you for listening, and I really appreciate all of the feedback. Make sure you smash the like button and click subscribe and notification bell and all that junk. I don't care so much about that stuff, but I know it helps grow the channel, and I do care about more people hearing, Yeshua's channelings. I care about people hearing from NDE experiencers, and I do have maybe a few things to contribute myself, I hope, but I'm not here posing as some expert or guru or someone who's got it all figured out or someone who's just ultra spiritual and lives their life consistently. I'm a hot mess, everybody. And I'm okay with that because I'm human and I'm in an experience of duality. And so being able to forgive myself when I act feral and ridiculous is a good thing. It's needed, because if I don't forgive myself, then I just spin out and become more destructive and unhinged and frustrated and angry. And I'm learning every day how to release, this attachment to needing to please everybody and be like perfect, and just to let things flow and to be okay with living moment to moment and just trusting that even if this body falls apart or the circumstances around me fall apart, that it's not determining anything about me on a deep level, on a soul or a spirit level. That the things here are temporary, and we have a choice on how we choose to go through them. So, all right. You can email me at youhavethekeys639@gmail.com. The 639 is for 639 hertz, which is the frequency of the heart chakra, just in case you're wondering. And you can also follow me on Instagram at youarethe1youseek. If you have any questions, you want to maybe share your story on the show, I would love to hear from you, and let me know if you're specifically interested in coming on the show. Some people share their stories with me, but I get the vibe they're not actually wanting to, be on the podcast. So, and hopefully I haven't assigned that idea to people who want to be on and just haven't been direct about it. But if you want to be on, be direct and just share your story and let me know kind of what you want to say, and we'll set that up. In the meantime, I hope that as usual, you go in love and light, and namaste.